Manx Radio's Update with Christian Jones.
First to my good afternoon, it's 5 o'clock on Monday the 6th of October. I'm Christian Jones and this is Update. Welcome into 30 minutes of all the latest news, sport and travel compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's newsroom. On the way tonight, dairy farms are under increasing pressure as prolonged sunshine dries out the soil. Meanwhile, Douglas Council is urging the government to include local authorities in existing infrastructure schemes to support the development of more social housing. And FC Isle of Man have suffered yet another defeat, this time under new management. Drop me a message if you want to say hello. Text WhatsApp to 166 177 or email me at studio@manxradio.com. But first, let's get the latest with Siobhan Fletcher.
Fastamai. Police are telling residents in the north of the island not to approach or engage with a man deemed high risk. Follows an appeal earlier today for sightings of Taylor Murphy. If you're driving your vehicle or are on foot and are flagged down or approached by him, you're asked not to stop or approach him. Secure your vehicle, remain at distance and call 999 immediately. Do not attempt to engage with him. Residents in the Mackald, Laxey and Ramsey area should ensure their property is secure, doors and windows closed and locked. There's more on this at manxradio.com. Production of milk at some farms in the north of the Isle of Man is becoming harder due to the soil being too dry, according to the Manx National Farmers Union. General Secretary Sarah Comish says it's been a hard summer, particularly compounded by restrictions around importation due to blue tongue.
Biosecurity is absolutely a priority for the industry. It's a really key point for us on the island that we have such low disease, and the industry absolutely wants to keep that standard.
The leader of Douglas City Council is urging government to let local authorities access existing infrastructure schemes to help deliver new social housing. Currently, the Island Infrastructure Scheme is only open to private developers, many of whom have chosen to pay a commuted sum rather than include 25% affordable housing in their projects. Further afield, Greta Thunberg is amongst more than 170 activists being deported from Israel after they were detained on board an aid flotilla bound for Gaza. Meanwhile, negotiators representing Hamas and Israel are holding indirect talks in Egypt to discuss a possible peace plan. One of the victims of the Nottingham attack in June 2023 has been awarded the George Medal for her exceptional courage. Grace O'Malley Kumar was stabbed to death whilst trying to save her friend Barnaby. Her brother James says she'll be remembered for her heroism.
My never-ending goal in life is to only be more like Grace, and so it should be for everybody else. Grace's courage may have ended that night, but her beacon of light never will. Her bravery, her kindness and her love will continue to guide us, always.
And rapper Bad Bunny has hit back at critics over the decision to make him the Super Bowl halftime show performer next year. They're your headlines. I'll have your news in full at 6.
Good, Maya. Thank you very much for that, Siobhan. Let's take a look at the weather now, brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Dry with sunny or clear intervals, moderate to fresh southwest winds, turning cloudy overnight as the winds begin to strengthen. Temperatures fall to around 11 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, though, after a dry start, outbreaks of rain or drizzle will develop through the morning, turning persistent in the afternoon before gradually clearing in the evening. The fresh, strong southwest wind will veer northwest and ease as the last of the rain clears. Top temperature of 15 degrees Celsius.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
A ground source heat pump can save thousands of pounds a year, and you can harness this energy on island with Geothermal Limited, the water borehole experts. Visit drilling.im and see how a ground source heat pump borehole works. That's drilling.im.
Reach the Isle of Man's biggest radio audience with Manx Radio. Airtime, sponsorship and digital opportunities available. For more information on how we can help your business grow its market share, contact the friendly, experienced team on sales at manxradio.com.
Cannell's Agricultural Supplies have been serving the good folk of the north for over 30 years, supplying homegrown wheats, whole and rolled oats, working clothing, fencing, animal feeds, parts, tools and emergency supplies. Call Julia on 880206 or find Cannell's on Facebook.
Direct cremation is just that. An affordable and simple cremation without all the costs associated with a funeral service. Find out more by visiting directcremation.im or phone Direct Cremations on 478 422.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
5 minutes past 5 on Manx Radio's Update. Welcome to the programme. We all know the saying, make hay while the sun shines, a common mantra for farmers. But what happens if you're a dairy farmer and there's too much sun? Well, milk production at some farms in the north of the island is said to have been affected by the soil being too dry. What exactly does that mean, though? Well, Chanel Suku has been finding out.
The summer was the warmest on record for the Isle of Man. We could all go out to the beach, have a picnic in the park, or head for a pint in the local pub's beer garden, all while basking in the sun. But for some farmers on the island, the hot weather has actually caused a number of problems. Last week, Ailen Dairy, a private family-run farm in Sulby, posted about the issues it's been facing.
As you know, the prolonged dry spell caused an issue with grass growth, which ultimately was the catalyst for the significant drop in milk production. 40% of the herd has not recovered and will not recover until they calve again. To replenish the herd, we've tried to buy some cows on island, however, there is none available. Imports from Great Britain are currently prohibited due to the blue tongue virus. We're now exploring the possibility of importing from Ireland, however, the next boat isn't until December. The yoghurt is out of production until our levels rise and butter production is on hold. The knock-on effect from all of this comes at financial cost. Thank you once again for your continued support through this difficult time.
But just how hot was the weather this year? Well, according to Ronaldsway Met Office, this summer was the warmest on record in the Isle of Man, despite a blip over TT. Typically, June, July and August had consistently warm temperatures and below average rainfall. It also follows from the warmest and sunniest spring on record here. But what impact does all of this have on the farming community? I asked the General Secretary of the Manx Farmers Union, Sarah Comish, exactly that.
It is one of the problems that we've got going on, but it's really been compounded by the restrictions on imports at the moment. One of the other things that's going on for the industry is because of blue tongue in the UK, we haven't been able to import any stock to the island. Now, most stock is produced on island, but we do import particularly breeding stock, new breeding stock. So that has caused a bit of a problem. As time goes on, it gets more and more difficult. We've only got one route for imports at the moment, and that's Northern Ireland. And because they're so limited on sailings from Northern Ireland, it's becoming increasingly problematic.
Should we be concerned or be worried at the moment?
Not at the moment. However, we are going to hopefully sit down and have talks with the department about how we can navigate this very difficult situation. Biosecurity is absolutely a priority for the industry. It has to be. It's a really key point for us on the island that we have such low disease, and the industry absolutely wants to keep that standard. The alternatives would be much, much worse than the situation we're in now. So it is super important, but it is definitely becoming extremely problematic. The restrictions around blue tongue, it could potentially go on for some years yet.
Sarah Comish, General Secretary of the Manx National Farmers Union. And we will be following up on the blue tongue issue and the pressure it's putting on farmers in the coming days ahead. Quick update, we've just had something come through from the Isle of Man Constabulary. You may remember hearing this in the news with Siobhan. It reads, we can now confirm that the male previously reported as missing and later the subject of a safety information alert has been located by police. As a result, there is no ongoing risk to members of the public at this time. Right, 9 minutes past 5, the leader of Douglas City Council is urging the government to let local authorities access existing infrastructure schemes to help deliver new social housing. Currently, the Island Infrastructure Scheme is only open to private developers, many of whom have chosen to pay a commuted sum rather than the 25% affordable housing in their projects. Government admitted last year that no public sector homes have been built during the current administration. Councillor Devon Watson says it's time for a policy shift from central government, while Ramsey Town Commissioner Juan McGuinness gave his thoughts.
You never want to penalise someone who's making a good faith effort, right? But I also think that to some extent that the government does have schemes that allow developers to sort of build on brownfield sites, but these aren't currently available to local authorities to build social housing on these sites, and that's one thing I'd like to see changed. A policy move, big brownfield site, middle of Douglas, can we get some of the same support that a private developer gets to build a lot of social housing units on this site? And I think that there's a lot of problems we can solve, because the fact that if you've got a brownfield site in the middle of town that can be built on but it's expensive to build on, that's an opportunity. And I think that one thing I'm optimistic with is that maybe not in the run-up to an election year, but I do think that a proactive government would be able to look at these and solve a lot of these problems.
OK. Juan McGuinness then, public sector housing. What are the plans in Ramsey for public sector housing?
Yeah, so I put forward a proposal for our staff to go away and write a housing strategy, because I think up until now we've been sort of waiting for the DOI to give some direction or some funding, or we've been quite passive, and I want us to be more proactive. The central government seem to view social housing as a cost, and I would see it as an investment. Whether it's brownfield sites, whatever the factor, we are providing affordable places for people to live and therefore contribute into the town, which is dramatically important. And I want us to be looking ahead 5, 10, 25 years. I don't want us to just be sat back and thinking, well, we've got one project on the go and we'll just focus entirely on that, and then once it's finished, look around for the next one, because the timeframes on these developments are 5, 10 and 25 years. You need to be looking ahead to the next opportunity and not just be waiting for the DOI to move at glacial speed into providing funding. And I know the DOI have made some noises in recent months about sort of having a clearer pathway to funding and things like that. I've yet to see that actually come forward in any action. I will be cautiously optimistic that occurs, but what I don't want is for it to be sort of thrown back at, well, Ramsey Town Commission could have been doing more. I want us to be doing absolutely everything and being first in the queue.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
12 minutes past 5, a UK company has been appointed to help the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture as it prepares its next climate change plan. Sean Cowper has the details.
DEFA Minister Claire Barber announced in the summer that work was getting underway to put in place the island's next set of climate targets. She's now confirmed greenhouse gas inventory specialists AETHA will be supporting the development of the 2027 to 2032 document, which will replace the existing 5-year strategy. The Climate Change Act requires a 5-year plan to be in effect at all times, with the current one due to expire in 2 years' time. Each plan must set out how the island will reach its emissions reduction targets of 35% by 2030, 45% by 2035 and net zero by 2050. The appointment of the Oxford-based firm will be in place until the plan is signed off by the Council of Ministers, which is expected to be in 24 months' time. The company, which also provides emissions data for Net Zero Isle of Man, was chosen following an open procurement process. Responding to a Tynwald written question from Glenn Faber and Peel MHK Kate Lord-Brennan, Minister Barber says the total cost of the contract is under £100,000.
Sean Cowper, thank you very much. Now, is party politics a blessing or a curse? With Isle of Man's general election on the horizon and new political parties emerging, some are asking whether a party system could help or hinder government on the island. Lord Daniel Finkelstein, a long-term political advisor, Times columnist, member of the House of Lords and a director of Chelsea Football Club, recently visited the island and toured Tynwald. I sat down with him to talk politics, parties and the Manx way of doing things.
The fascinating question, how do you maintain independence rather than party positions? So for anybody who's interested, as I am, in the kind of mathematics of politics, when you start talking about politics with small groups like that, it's really, really interesting. So I was completely riveted by it. Really, really real privilege.
And you're no stranger to politics. You were obviously an advisor to Sir John Major. The UK has a very defined party politics system. But obviously, like you said, the Isle of Man has almost no party politics. What are your thoughts on a parliamentary system where there is almost no party political influence? influence?
Well, it's fascinating, and in some ways, obviously, it's the ideal because you get greater independence. If you were to look in a mathematical way at how politics works, the one thing you wouldn't want to do was to say to people, one, you all have to agree with each other, and two, you must never admit your mistakes, right? And that's those are the two organising principles of much of party politics. You've got to agree with everyone else and never admit your mistakes. Whereas if you were trying to organise something that was optimal for decision making, you would always admit your mistakes, and also you would use all the diversity of opinion to create a collective wisdom. So yours is a much better system. And the only reason that you're able to work that is because 1,600 votes is enough to get a front row seat. And so you can know your voters, and you can be more constituency orientated rather than party orientated. In a British political system, the problem is that there are so many voters, you can't do that. I once, when I ran for Parliament, ran a couple of times, I realised that physically, if I divided up the amount of time it took me to go to each door, I simply couldn't visit every member of the electorate and talk to them in a way that you would like to in order to be their representative and persuade them that you should be allowed to do that. Because I couldn't do that, you have to give them broad gauge messages, and then, of course, you need to organise yourself in the form of parties in order just to give people a few simple messages and get them across on television because there's a limited bandwidth. I guess social media may give back that possibility of connecting individual politicians with individual electors. It's at least possible. It doesn't seem to be going that way, does it? It does seem to be encouraging everybody to kind of go in behind everyone else, and maybe that's just a human capability. But I was really impressed by that sense of independence and reliance on constituency that you have here, and long may it last.
Lord Daniel Finkelstein speaking with me there. Fascinating discussion. Head on over to the Manx Radio newscast section. You can listen to the full interview. Let's take a look at the travel now.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, there's a few things to be aware of. We'll start in Douglas. Temporary lights on the old Castletown Road near the Nunnery. 24 hours a day for work on the manholes. In Braddon, temporary lights on Braddon Road, just up from Braddon Bridge. Over in Santon, the Mount Murray back road is closed for the building of a concrete underpass. Meanwhile, in Patrick, temporary lights on the main road through the village at the Patrick Road Junction, 24 hours a day for water main work. And of course, something which is ongoing, you'll probably be aware of, but I'll say it anyway. The mountain road is closed from Brandywell to the Craig for drainage work. Take a look at the steam packet. Everything is looking all good there to me. A quick trip down to Ronaldsway Airport. On the arrivals board, I'm seeing the 5:40 EasyJet from London Gatwick. That's delayed, due in at 6:10. Meanwhile, on the departures board, everything is green and blue. So I'm going to say that everything is all good.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with
Quayside. Hello. This is the month 25 years ago that nearly 80 Manx children went to London to perform a show about the Isle of Man at the newly opened Millennium Dome. It was a blast. I'm Charles Gard, and I was one of the team who helped with the project. And this Tuesday, I'll be bringing together some of the others who made this memorable event happen, and we'll be recalling the challenges and the triumphs. Join me this Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. for the Millennium Dome show.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Approaching 19 minutes past 5 on Manx Radio's update, one of the island's most iconic native birds, the red-billed chough, has seen its population fall by 24% over the past decade. The striking member of the crow family, recognised by its bright red legs and bill, has been the focus of the latest Manx BirdLife Chuff census, which was carried out between April and June this year. Richard Seed, the charity's field worker for the census, has been speaking with Simon Richardson.
The census is really important just to give us a bit of a pulse check of what's happening, and we've got to be careful not to overinterpret that result, but it is certainly a trigger for us to do a lot more to understand what's happening in the population.
What do you think could be behind it? Have you any idea?
So we can look through previous research on the Isle of Man and across the water as well. Generally, land use is a significant factor. Chuff like that sort of well-grazed, short sward grassland as their primary foraging habitat. So when that land use changes and they lose that foraging habitat, or when the grazing intensity might shift, or different treatment of the grazers of livestock, any sort of worming treatments can reduce the invertebrate abundance in the dung and in the soil ecology, can have an impact. Also things like weather events and the general shifting climate.
Now in the figures that you produced in the census, it suggests that some parts of the island are doing better than others. I think the majority of the population is focused in the south of the island. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that is now the case. Previously, the east coast had the largest population. The most significant decline's been on the west coast, but the south coast remaining stable has now given it the greatest proportion of nests. So that's somewhere where we can start to look at what's happening, is look at what the differences in the south compared to the west or the east coast, for example.
So what do you think we can do as a nation, if you like, to try and redress the balance and get these numbers up again?
I think the important thing is, hopefully with the timing of the census, we do have a chance to actually reverse this decline, but there is a real call to action. Firstly, some closer monitoring. So this 10-year census is useful, getting a bit of a pulse check, but we do need to take a bit of a deeper dive. So in knowing that the population's declining, it's good to understand exactly what's causing that decline. So whether it's actually the survival of the adult birds, whether it's the breeding success, or whether it's the recruitment of the young birds back into the breeding population, or a combination of the three. The other thing is having a bit of research into how land use has changed. We've got the really good agri-environment scheme. So through that, we might be able to incentivise some different farming practices or shine light on what's working well in certain areas.
Richard Seed there from Manx BirdLife speaking to Simon Wright. We're going to turn our attention to sport up next.
Get the full story. Tune in to Manx Radio's newscast for in-depth interviews behind the headlines. Find the newscast now at manxradio.com or your usual podcast provider.
Well, FC Isle of Man fell to a 2-1 defeat to Barnoldswick Town in the NWCFL Premier Division over the weekend. It was caretaker manager Rick Holden's first game in charge of the island side. He told Rob Pritchard the match has given the team areas to focus on.
Well, we started well, but we get to half-time 1-0. And we knew they were causing us problems, so we thought we could perhaps capitalise, and we were getting to grips with it second half, and then we just conceded 2 daft goals. I mean, it's not a true reflection of how well they've done, to be fair. They weren't bad at attacking at times. They put some good stuff together, so you've got to accept that, and you've got to switch on and deal with it. But it wasn't that sort of move that did us. It was a set piece where people have switched off. The keepers either got confused who's going to head it or what have you. But it's more the quality going forward. I've asked them to do certain things, different things, and the quality's just not there consistently. Enough. It's there occasionally, but it's not there enough to unhinge the team, so they can get away with defending the odd one. But if we put more consistent balls in, we'll put teams under more pressure. So we didn't sustain the pressure long enough in the end to get the equaliser.
On the flip side of that, though, what do you think you maybe did right in certain moments of the game?
Again, when the crosses and shots were achieved, it was good and it looked dangerous stuff. And they've cleared a couple off the line, that sort of thing. I was pleased with just the energy and the commitment, obviously, which they are very committed that way. And I think we got the rough end of a few decisions, we got the rough end of a bit of the weather, and we didn't capitalise on their mistakes at the back, whereas they did. And it was only really second half a couple of blunders as a team collectively that unhinged us. But yeah, I'm pleased with it. But I mean, it's been a very hectic time in the last 10 days or so, and we've got quite a bit of work to do yet.
Yeah, it's been less than 2 weeks since you actually took up the role, and you've only had a couple of sessions with the players. What can you do in such a short space of time before you get out in a game like this?
Well, yeah, I mean, get to know the players for a start and see who's available, patch a team together. I mean, we've got people playing well out of position in terms of full-backs and things like that, and forward line. But, you know, we just try and give them confidence and say this is where we want to play. But it's such a switch to what they've been doing that it's going to take a bit of time for them to grasp it and produce that quality. But we've got the basics there, and with people coming back in, I'm sure, given a few more sessions and a few more games, we'll start to see what we want to do come out a bit more.
Well, there we go. Unfortunate series of events for FC Isle of Man. Well, would you look at that? Normally I have Rob Pritchard sat in front of me, but today we are graced with the presence of John Moss. Faster, Mike.
Yes, hello. Yeah, we've heard about the Chaffs being drop in their numbers. Are the Ravens in David's speeches? Usually there's a new manager effect, and we're just waiting for that to kick in. Rick Holden there. Well, the defeat for the Ravens condemns the Ireland side to a third straight game without victory and leaves them third from bottom of the table. They will have another chance to put things right on Wednesday against South Liverpool. That's an away match kicking off at 7:45. Well, Amy was with us over the weekend. The Storm, of course, that meant quite a few football matches had to be called off. Uni Mills against Laxey, Foxdale, Peel and Russian United against St John's. But the results, Corinthians 3, Onchan 1, Braddon and Douglas High School Old Boys, a 3-all draw there, and Ayr United 0, St Mary's 4. And AFC's women's side, that's Maloo AFC's women's side, secured their best win since the mid-2000s, beating Union Mills, wait for this, 14-0. Maloo goalkeeper Georgie Quell credited with her first clean sheet. Whether they actually had to do any saving at all, we don't know. They just brought along a deck chair and admired what was going on at the other end. Tennis, Isle of Man professional player Billy Harris has an early match in the Jinan Open in China. It's against Japan's Yusuke Watanuki. We'll keep keeping eyes on that. That's in Jinan. I'm not quite sure whereabouts in China that is, but we'll keep close tabs on it. In motorsport, the Chris Kelly Memorial Rally took place over the weekend. It was an All-Ireland podium in the end, the pairing of Niall McGonigal and Caelan McKenna taking the top spot. McGonigal said he didn't expect this at all, as it was his first tarmac rally. Everything clicked, he said, on the first stage. We led from start to finish and won by 44 seconds. Manx driver Max Bradshaw says he's counting his lucky stars. He came off at Sartfield Road and crashed into the adjacent field. He and his co-driver, Stephen Christian, reported to have walked away with just a few bruises. Lucky man. The Mitsubishi they were driving, slightly more worse for wear, but Max says he had it running again. The Manx boxer Sam Rennie is back in action in Thailand at the weekend. He maintained his perfect record with a dominant victory over his opponent in Phuket. His next bout, when is that? You're probably waiting to see. When can we get there to watch it? Well, you'll have to travel down under. It's the Thunderdome 52 event at Metro City in Northbridge, Australia, and that's on the 28th of November, so that's quite a long way away. So we're keeping our fingers crossed for the Ravens. Obviously, the second game against Rick Holden will be on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, 7:45, away from home, so you'll have to travel if you want to cheer on the boys.
Good reminder. Thank you very much for that, John. Well, that's it for Update this evening. Thanks very much to newsreader Siobhan Fletcher. I'll catch up with you tomorrow, same time. So until then, take care. Bye-bye for now.